a good little segue as well. We were talking offline before. It's been a big week for footy, AFL men's, AFL women's, and so on. A lot happening. And you mentioned you want to have a bit of a chat about it, which I think it's good to talk openly and publicly to talk about
Yeah.
these sorts of things. Where did you want to start?
I just think it's important to highlight in general, I always talk about the word safety with you. And you've always made me feel that way through like your behavior. You've never once really verbally said that, but you've always been very respectful to any females around you. Your parents have raised you so incredibly well, and it really shines through. And I guess it's important to, first of all, thank amazing men in our lives that are that way, because I don't know how common that is. And the other one is to really highlight how different it is for women than it is for men, how we experience things so different. And I think it just raises the conversation of, I watched a podcast, and the man on the podcast very much is, he's got sisters, he's got daughters, he's got a wife. And he was saying on his podcast, the disrespect doesn't just start when you physically touch a female, when you're not welcome to touch her. It starts by sharing photos. It starts by sharing conversation, by name calling or degrading and things like that. And I just thought it was an important opportunity to have that conversation, just to share a little bit more of what it's like for us. Like I use the example for you, like if you were to go to the gym early morning, late night, what's your thought process in that? When I leave LGO, like I was saying to you before, I make sure I fill up my water bottle is completely full to the top. So it's really, really heavy. Should I have to use it to keep myself safe? I have to make sure my key's accessible. I have to make sure I'm really quick from A to B. And it's literally like a 30-minute process to feel safe enough to get myself out. And I notice it with all the girls. So we try to buddy as much as we can. But I just think the more conversations we have, the more incredible people in our lives, like, yourself and people in your group that listen and outside of us, will take it on board and understand how it can actually land for the other person.
Yeah, there's some really good points. And from my perspective, I feel like we've come a long way, but
Mm.
it's only so small on the journey of how far we need to go as men in the community.
Uh-huh.
And you bring up the good example about the gym or leaving work late at night. I once heard it paraphrasing to the story of like, it's like a car and a motorcyclist going down the road, both
Uh-huh.
on the same road, both got the same rules, but the risk for the motorcyclist is
Mm.
much, much, much higher of how things can go wrong. And for people that are quick and easy, like to dismiss concerns like you've raised and
Yeah.
not take it as seriously, that's a real sort of simple analogy of like looking at it like it's so much, the risk is so much higher, and we have the responsibility as men to lead that charge where women don't have to deal with that sort of, risk and fear in their lives, because it's
Mm.
not fair. Like, I can get up and go for a run basically any time of the day or night that I like, but would I send my daughter out like that? No. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many certain, and that's shit house, to be honest. Like, it shouldn't have to be that way. Um, but I
It
say, like,
should.
we've come a long way. But like, the sad news is, from my experience over like
Mm.
decades, Lily, there's so far to go.
Yeah.
There's so far to go, and it feels very foreign to me to hear sometimes. Well, like when I hear comments and attitudes, there's so far to go, and there's lots of great work going on at schools and homes, and we're chipping away at it. But there's a
Yeah.
long way to go where the not all men clearly, but like the
Mhm.
culture in a lot of groups needs to change
Mhm.
drastically.
And look, I grew up with lots of boy cousins, and the thing is with if they were ever cheeky, which they were, as we were growing up, they were kind of finding their ways. My aunties would step in straight away and be like, I almost heard that. Don't talk like that. If you have that to say, then you are just trying to big note yourself, and you're doing it at somebody else's expense that's not here to defend themselves. And, for a long time, I thought that was really normal. And then I came out in, school and all those things, and saw the way, like even back then, the girls were treated in comparison, let's say, to the boys, and the comments that were made to us and the name callings and all that kind of stuff. Compared to boys, it was just, and then you think, oh, that's high school, leave that behind. And then you come into a workforce. And then again, I worked for West Track. I talk about that a lot. And I was very fortunate to have very great experiences there with a lot of, it's male dominated. It's a male dominated industry. And I had a really great experience there with basically every single manager that I had. They were so incredibly respectful, and they were very much there for the apprentices as well. If conversations like that would occur or comments were made, they were the ones to step in. And I guess the point of raising the conversation is hopefully to help everybody know that we're all responsible to a degree to kind of step in and go, oh, do we really need to say that? Is that appropriate? Like if that was your sister, if that was your child, would a comment like that land? And then to start that conversation from, and I feel like if it happens everywhere, it's normalized,
Mm,
right?
yep.
Only happens in one place, and then you go outside of that place and it's like, oh, my mum, like if it only happens at home, my kids be like, oh, my mum, she's just over the top. But if it starts happening everywhere, then these young impressionable people that are now coming up, growing into their journey and lifespan, they're then able to turn around and go, oh, this is appropriate everywhere. I should be using this language everywhere and things like that.
Mm,
How, like for you, I'm curious generally to know, like for you being in the footy world as an umpire and things like that, you would have seen some things, right?
mm,
I can imagine.
mm.
And you're so different because, your upbringing and your sister and stuff. So how do you then separate one from the other?
I do my best to lead by example as much of the time as possible, whether that as at home or whatever groups I'm in. Um, could I be doing more? Should I be doing more in certain situations and examples? Like the answer is probably yes.
Mhm.
And I've never been involved or seen anything that's a massive red flag or crossing the line to something serious. I've never been in that situation, but talking more from a general
Yeah.
attitude commentary
Mhm.
point of view. Um, yeah, I don't engage. I get out of there. You pull people up where you can. Um, leading by example is one thing, but we also it's an uphill battle in the social media aspect from what like the manosphere that gets those sorts of things that get pushed on young men. And so the importance of starting really young in primary school with education and awareness, and a big part of it, not all of it clearly, but a big part of it I think comes back to self-esteem. If
Mhm.
you are centered in yourself and are comfortable in yourself, there's no need to punch down or to have those sort of attitudes. Like I think a lot of it comes from like in the male, back and forth from
Mhm.
trying to one up each other
Mhm.
and not having a sense of self where like I just don't see the point in engaging in that. I don't feel the need to like, but yeah, there's a lot of one upping each other in that sort of space, and we've got a long way to go still.
Mhm.
Uh, but this week's been to look at like a positive out of the last week or so with what's gone on in the AFL. The response has been massive, has
Mhm.
been absolutely massive, and that's super important. The players were stood down. There's still a lot more to
Yeah.
unfold, but you look at how serious the club and the community's taken it and how
Mhm.
much coverage it's got. That shows that we are on the way. Still a long way to go, but how much the world's come down on top of them to date, and there will be more to come.
Yeah.
Um, but it has been a positive to see how much of a line in the sand has been drawn.
And I love the fact that there was instant impact from them, because we know it's still under investigation. We know police are still doing their thing, and it sounds quite complex. It sounds like there's quite a lot of moving parts that they need to really figure out how they've aligned within the timeline and things like that. But instead of saying, look, we're going to let them play because the investigation's pending, the AFL stepped in straight away. The Sydney Summons stepped in straight away and were like, no, they're being stood down and they're not even an option for selection because we're here. And I
Mm,
think I saw their win, and I'm not a Sydney Swan supporter. Sorry, guys. Never have been. It's just they're the wrong colour for me in all of my sports. But I just thought it was beautiful to see their emotion. They really came together. You could see they were really hurt by it. whatever is going on within their club at the moment. And the way that the people came out for the Sydney Swans Women's Club, they had, I think, a record breaking
They
16,000.
did. Mm.
And that just makes me love humankind. And it just makes me continuously have faith that we're on the right track. And those are the actions, because I'm so much about action more than words. And those are the actions, I think, that really back people saying, you know, we want to do better. We want things to be better for women. Because, like, I would love to get up and go for a run first thing in the morning out in the fresh air. I would love that so much, but I don't feel safe. And I don't feel safe because I've been in situations where cars have followed. I've been in situations where I've even been egged. Remember one morning a few years back, I was running up and down Arundel Drive, and it was 4 kids in a car throwing eggs.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? And stuff like that. So you kind of sit there and go to see that amount of people coming out. They're slowly shifting that, because then maybe when my girls are old enough, they're going to have the option to run wherever they want. They're not going to have to
Mm.
be inside on a treadmill. And I just really wanted to talk about that today, even though I know we are strapped for time and things like that, to really go in depth, but just to touch on it, to start the conversations, and I suppose to make sure there's also a little bit of empathy for us, that we are on that motorcycle. We don't have the protection like the car, yet the car is almost the biggest threat to us
Mhm.
on that road.
Mhm.
So, next time before a comment is made or things like that, to maybe put that thought process in your mind to kind of go, wow, I'm equivalent to a car here. Next to a
Mm.
motorcycle, what am I going to do with that?
Well, before we get to our guests, like, I think the message I'd like to send is to all men is to think about how would you feel about somebody talking about or acting towards your sister or your mother or your daughter or your auntie the same way that you're acting or behaving,
Yeah.
and to be better and to be the example, to lead by example of how you would expect people to treat, the women in your life, and even down to little things. Not that I run a lot these days, but like I know if I'm out running, well, whenever it is, if I'm coming up behind or in front of a woman running, I'll often cross the road and just
Mm-hmm.
run on the other. They don't need me sneaking up behind them if they've got their headphones on. And next minute, I'll just
Yeah.
go the long way around to try and alleviate some of the whatever fear that might be there. And that's just a very small example, but I'd encourage all men to think about how you would feel being there while someone's saying that or doing that to an important woman in your life.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
really well said.